Hello, my name is Eric James. This is FTE 217 Modern Sporting Rifle, week 4 assignment. The date today is 2 November. This assignment is a 5-parter. Part 1 is detailed disassembly of the firearm. Part 2 is a demonstration of the cleaning method that was used in the lecture. So before we get going, perform a quick clearing. No ammunition in the chamber, no ammunition in the magazine. Well, this rifle's clear. So I'll be right back with back for part 2, cleaning as outlined. So per the lecture, the first thing we're looking at is the barrel and barrel extension. Inspection purposes, I'm looking for dusting or pitting down the bore. After I'm done inspecting that, I'm taking a cleaning rod with a caliber appropriate jag with a Hoppe's number 9 soak patch, soaking the bore and then letting it sit. Next, I'm taking a bore brush or a chamber brush on the T-handle, clean out the barrel extension. Next, I'm moving to the bolt and bolt carrier. The first thing I'm going to do is look at the bolt tail. If there's a pile of carbon, I'm going to take my nylon bristle brush, brushing it with Hoppe's number 9, letting it soak for a little bit while I inspect wear items. Then I'm going to take a brass scraper, scrape the bolt tail, get rid of all the carbon. Next, I'm looking at the bolt face and the locking lugs, making sure that they're square and not bent, broken, or I'm also looking at the bolt face, making sure that there's no rusting, there's no junk on it from firing. Once that's done, we move on to the bolt carrier. This is just going to get a brush job because there shouldn't be any carbon. The only carbon that's going to be is in here, and we'll do a little scrape job in there if necessary with the bolt or bolt carrier tool. As far as lubricating this goes, I'm not going to lubricate it at all. I will lubricate the bolt on the reassembly. I lubricate these rails as well as the body where it rides in the upper receiver. Finally, with the bolt carrier, I'm cleaning off the pin. Using that same brass scraper, I'm going to scrape any carbon buildup that's on the firing pin, wipe it down. Next, we'll move on to the lower receiver. For the lower receiver, I'm getting into the fire control group. I'm going to clean that out as best I can because a lot of junk gets thrown in there, especially if you run the gun wet. I'm going to take a couple of long Q-tip, wipe it out, move on to the trigger. So what I'm inspecting on the trigger, the hammer, and the disconnector are the sear surfaces. These sear surfaces need to be sharp. They need to not be damaged. These also will get a rub or a wipe down and a brush off with that nylon bristle brush. And then finally, the disconnector, I'm looking at this face right here where it engages with the hammer to disconnect it from the trigger. Moving on to the upper receiver, this also gets a brush inside here down into the charging handle groove and just cleaning out everything. I would take a paper towel to wipe everything out. Also, part of the upper receiver is the charging handle. It would be just a brush off, a light lubrication on top. Be right back after I put this together for part 3. Before I forget, this particular method of cleaning, a lot different than the method of cleaning I've used in the past. The simple fact that in the Marine Corps, we're not allowed as motor T guys, as infantry guys, as anything, to break down these rifles into their teeny tiny little components. That's an armorer's job. So the most that we can do is pull the bolt and the bolt carrier group apart, upper and lower receivers apart, and the buffer spring and buffer out of the tube. Everything gets wiped down. We punch the bore on the barrel. And as a gunsmith, I think it's important to be able to clean it this way for the simple fact that you can spot parts that are malfunctioning or potentially going to malfunction and things that may need to be replaced. I'm done with part 2. We'll move on to part 3 in just a second. All right, back for part 3. The rifle is completely assembled, educating customers to spot and avoid ammunition-induced malfunctions. So what we're looking for is we look at the customer and their ammunition choices. Are they using reloaded ammunition? Are they using good quality ammunition? Are they using poor quality ammunition? What we're looking at in that ammunition is some telltales of whether or not primers are popped, primers are crushed, casings are bent or dented, projectiles are seated too far into the case mouth, those kinds of things. The problems start arising, overpressuring chambers, squib loading if you're using reloads, and getting sticking cases in the chamber, dented and bent up. brass. I don't think there's one platform that's more susceptible than another. If it's an ammunition induced or malfunction, it's not necessarily the platform's fault. So damage that can occur from some of these issues: failure to feed, failure to fire, failure to extract and eject. When I said squib loads, I'm talking about ammunition that has no powder in the casing. The primer produces enough pressure to lodge the bullet in the bore, and if you load another round and pull the trigger, you have a potential for blowing up the gun, seriously injuring yourself or somebody else. I'll be back for part 4, where we're asked if we should train our customers in proper shooting principles to include stance and grip. And for me, the answer is yes. Simply because if they're trained by us and they bring us a malfunction, we know that it's not their shooting principles. We know that they're managing recoil properly. We know that they're gripping the gun the same every time. We know that they're standing behind the firearm in order to manage the recoil properly every time. If we can eliminate the human factor, I think that makes our lives as gunsmiths a lot easier than trying to figure out why we're stovepiping casings instead of fully ejecting them, when it could be as simple as human error, not managing the recoil properly and not allowing the bolt or the slide to cycle properly. So I think we as gunsmiths have an obligation to train our customers in proper shooting principles. I'll be back for part 5. Back for part 5. Understanding and knowing the operation of the firearm and the attachment that you're going to put on your rifle is important because it changes the way your rifle functions. For example, your flash hider turbulates the gas at the end of the muzzle to reduce the flash. A muzzle brake does nothing for flash. It enhances sound and reduces recoil. And then the suppressor reduces flash, reduces sound, and reduces recoil. The effect of the attachment before you put it on the rifle will only enhance your knowledge. So that does it for week 4 assignment. My name's Eric James. Thanks for watching.